we've removed our counter tariffs, and we just keep getting slammed as a country from the US, basically almost into submission right now.
You're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast, your go-to source for all things Canadian real estate. And now, here are your hosts, Paul Stevenson and David Warren.
Hello, and welcome back to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. My name is Paul Stevenson. I'm joined as always by David Warren. We're here to bring you the latest and greatest in Canadian real estate. I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing sponsors, Gertain Poirier Avocat Lawyers, Big Insurance in Westboro, and Centum, and our new partner, Easy Neon Signs. If you go to easyneonsigns.ca, use the promo code TOREP, TOREP, get 20% off each and every order. easyneonsigns.ca.
Easy.
David, how you doing? So easy.
Easy mortgages.
Easy financing. Yeah. What's up?
I'm doing well. I comparing both of our backgrounds, I'm stuck in an insane asylum and you're out in the jungle. That's basically what's going on.
You do look like you're in an insane asylum. Yeah, you just need those walls padded and you're all set. And I'm in the jungle.
Just realizing my shirt is blending into the background even too. Holy,
you're just a floating head right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm in Cartagena right now in Colombia, and this is actually my hotel. There's actually a pool behind me here. It's a beautiful space. I'm actually looking out at the road. People are looking at me like I'm crazy, but yeah, no, happy to be here. Happy to be here. Ready to rock. We've got a lot to cover today. Lots of articles. Lots of news.
We do.
What's in the
news?
What's in the news?
What's in the news?
Happening?
Well, I'm going to start it off with some doom and gloom.
Nice.
Building
as we love to do.
No, it was actually an interesting kind of summary put out by the Fraser Institute. So kind of talking about the Liberal government's Build Canada Homes plan that we spoke about the last episodes. And so this is actually an article asking, is it already doomed? It's a bold government move stirring skepticism in the housing world. Ottawa has launched the Build Canada Homes, a new agency backed by the $13 billion task force. And their plan is to build, as we mentioned before, 4,000 factory-made homes. Really on paper, like we kind of talked about and what others did as well, it's an ambitious and timely, initiative. But critics at the Fraser Institute argue that history might be repeating itself, which, tends to happen in all facets of life. And they're pointing to Ottawa's long record of mismanagement in its own real estate, sluggish disposal of surplus properties, lack of accountability, weak departmental coordination. If the government can't streamline its own office portfolio efficiently, they're arguing, how can it credibly deliver mass housing projects? So, this I thought was kind of interesting coming from the Fraser Institute, third-party institute kind of that looks at all different initiatives. And add to that, they're adding to that the political turnover, bureaucratic hurdles, and mandates over materials or green specs. And the critics, and they're warning the cost overruns and delays are likely. So they're cautioning the department might end up competing with private builders rather than adding new supply. So, it's an aggressive plan that they kind of have, so to speak. I argue about an aggressive plan, but there is, the oversight, transparency, and structural discipline that are needed if it's going to deliver. So, like we talked about before, they're back. This is backed by the new agency tasked with the plan of building 4,000 factory-built homes, backed by initial $13 billion commitment. Ottawa admitted in 2017 that nearly half its office space was underused, but by 2023 it had barely reduced that footprint. So this is 3.5 years before COVID even hit, that they were admitting, that the government was admitting that they had half its office space was being underused, let alone fast forward to today when obviously there's that work from home mandate. Fraser Institute's kind of looking at the history of not being able to use their office space effectively and manage that portfolio, let alone building these homes. And then in 2025, the Auditor General report found systemic weakness in data, target setting, interdepartmental incentives, and execution on timelines, which often takes 6 to 8 years to offload surplus buildings. So kind of looking at that history, plus then this program of whether they'll be able to execute on it or whether it's just headline grabbing, so to speak.
Well, we did get a lot of kickback, I guess, online after these comments. Now, I think that was just, again, based on this history and the historical data of what actually happens when these projects are announced and how long it takes. One comment from Mark Dimitri says, from my understanding, the $13 billion is not only for 4,000 homes. The 4,000 is just the first announcement. They do mention the sites have space of up to 45,000 units. Now, based on what you just said about it, potentially being 6 to 8 years, 45,000 units seems like that would take 10 times longer, right? Based on just simple math.
Yeah. I mean, there's nowhere in any of the, at least that I have found, and if that commenter is able to direct us to that outline that's specifying that they have a target of more than 4,000, I'd love to see it. But everything in the announcement by Mr. Carney and in that publication and news conference in Nepean in Ottawa last month, it was specifically about 4,000 factory-built homes. Yes, there is land available that could, I'm sure, house tens of thousands. Like even the Fraser Institute brings up that the federal government outlined in 2017 that half of its office space was underused. So yes, you could argue that if you took that away, that they'd then be able to build tens of thousands of homes. The likelihood of that happening is next to none because of how we're now fast forward 8 years and that office space is still underused even more so and not been transitioned. So what's the likelihood of that actually happening? And that's kind of a question that I actually pose. But in all of the announcement of the Build Canada Homes agency is that it's the $13 billion assigned is for creating the agency and the budget associated with getting things off the ground with the main primary target of 4,000 factory-built homes. So, yes, I think there were some comments that were arguing that's not $3.25 million per home. Well, to set up the agency, to get the bureaucracy in place and the levels in place, and to get plans and everything and remediate these lands, that's where the $3.25 million is coming from. Simple math of $3 billion divided by 4,000. There's nowhere that we've seen. And again, I would love it if somebody would be able to direct us to where it says 45,000 homes is like their target for that 13 billion, but that's nowhere to be seen that I've found in any sort of ratings.
So this was, I'll just read one more comment from Sierra. I didn't actually even see this one. This was from the 2 episodes ago when we were talking about this cost. So it says, hey, I just wanted to flag that I believe the 13 billion is the total operating budget for the agency, not how much it'll cost to build the 4,000 homes. My understanding is also that the government will not be paying to build the 4,000 units. Rather, they will be leveraging federal lands to incentivize private developers to build affordable units. In other words, the government will be allowing the private sector to build on federal lands for free if the private sector agrees to build the affordable units that the government wants them to build. The idea here is to remove the cost of land for developers so that it is more feasible for them to build the affordable units. It's basically as though someone gave you free land to build a house. It would make more financially feasible for you to build. Good news. The agency's mandate and budget includes a bunch of other stuff. For example, the agency will also be providing billions in incentives for home builders to build affordable homes, as well as some financing options for developers to help make home building more financially feasible right now.
Well, so that just goes back to exactly what I just said, that it's actually what that commenter is outlining. It's actually worse than $3.25 million per home, because
homes
it's
aren't even being
4,000 homes and that for that 13 billion, the homes aren't even being built for that. And that is just the cost of setting up this agency and to fund it. And then it's going to be on the private sector to build these and to fund them through
which will actually drive up the
financing.
Price.
That's just driving up the price. So it's actually, is she saying that it's worse than $3.25 billion then per unit? Is basically what it kind of sounds like, because it's basically she's saying that 13 billion is exactly as I said, to set up that agency and for building that 4,000 homes. However, if it is to the point that it's just to set up the agency and then to offload the build to private sector and they're then supposed to build it and fund it, it's even worse. So I'm going to just go with the former and say that they're going to build 4,000 homes for 13 billion at the $3.25 million and hope that it's not going to be, and hope that it's not higher, especially given that it's factory built homes, meaning small square footage homes that, no one really wants to live in. So, again, time will tell, but kind of interesting timing with regards to this coming up, because it's kind of looking at, will it suffer the same fate as the rest of the housing market where it's, political shifts, overlapping mandates, insufficient accountability, product available, mandates around Canadian-made or climate-friendly materials and building materials. And I know there was an announcement that came out today kind of about directly around building materials that I know you kind of wanted to highlight.
Well, Trump launched new tariffs on wood and lumber. So here's a quick summary. So breaking now, the U.S. is imposing new tariffs on wood products that could ripple through North American housing and construction. Starting October 14th, imports of soft wood lumber will face a 10% tariff, while kitchen cabinets, vanities, and certain wood furniture will incur 25% duties. And those rates are poised to jump even higher come January. Washington justifies the move under Section 232, claiming the U.S. must reduce reliance on foreign wood to protect national security and domestic manufacturing. For Canada, this stings. Our softwood lumber sector is already under pressure from countervailing and anti-dumping duties. These new tariffs add a volatile twist. What this means for the housing market, expect upward pressure on building costs, possible delays in construction, and tightened margins for developers. That in turn could feed into slower inventory growth and further affordability challenges. Yeah, basically 10% on imported softwood and lumber, 25% tariff on kitchen cabinets, vanities, and certain upholstered wood furniture. Things could go up January 1st, 2026, aka, for example, furniture up to 30%, cabinets up to 50%, unless trade deals are reached. And some countries with trade agreements may get reduced caps. So the UK's subject wood imports won't exceed 10%. EU and Japan capped at 15%. So I don't know. I mean, as one of the largest suppliers of softwood lumber to the US, I would imagine that Canada's going to be pretty affected by this.
Yeah, and this is absolutely terrible for individuals, for the Canadian economy in general. Yeah, just overall, those sectors are already so hit. And it's like really the kind of the big takeaways. It's a shock to the lumber and construction supply chain in Canada. Like it's going to affect costs, margins, permitting, project feasibility. It all could be impacted. So in mortgage and real estate, this could feed into higher building costs, certainly delays in construction inventory, affordability pressure. So, that's obviously something we talk about regularly is affordability of housing and the cost of building. And even as we're, like we were saying about the Build Canada Homes plan, we need these trade agreements in place sooner than later, because right now we are just taking it on the chin, and we have, and really we've removed our counter tariffs, and we just keep getting slammed as a country from the US, basically almost into submission right now. But this is going to have drastic impacts to people. And this is not just for building, but like anyone that's planning a renovation. If somebody submitted permits on their build, and they're building a multifamily building or a condo, they typically a lot of times they haven't ordered the materials yet in some cases. Like they might be shovels in ground doing excavation, but they haven't put that order in for kitchen cabinets. Like I know for clients right now that we're close to putting shovels in ground for multi-unit buildings, and this is going to be drastic. Like this is going to affect the budget drastically. And I'm gonna have to have a conversation with them today of like, you either need to like order materials now and put that in order in ahead of time to get this across in the next 2 weeks before you're, months out. Like it's going to be probably 6-9 months before they need the materials, but it could be something that they need to pre-order now in the next 2 weeks. So, I'm curious to see what the heck happens with counter tariffs, or ideally is just a trade agreement. But, kind of seems like that is, we thought we were going to have one when in August was the deadline, and then that came and went, and without any sort of comments or anything like that. But yeah, this is going to be really bad for a number of provinces as well. Like I know the Maritimes are being hit hard with because that's where a lot of the softwood lumber comes from is out in the Maritimes. So
you weren't kidding with the doom and gloom today. We're just there's a cloud just hovering over. Aside from my bald head shimmering from the sun on top of me, a lot of dark clouds. There was another article that you had with regards to Canadian parents and their support of first-time buyers. Did you want to let's change gears a bit here from the wood?
From the extreme doom and gloom.
Yeah. From wood to would they?
Yeah. No, I mean it's something we've talked about before. About first-time home buyers and younger generation, obviously getting financial support from their parents and grandparents. And this is, an article put out by BMO, and Ipsos survey, and kind of looking at the intergenerational finances and really kind of highlighting that nearly half of Canadian parents and grandparents, actually 45%, plan to financially support their adult children or grandchildren over the next year in purchasing a home, with housing, education, childcare costs escalating, the job market being terrible, especially for younger Canadians. Like those numbers for unemployment for those, the younger generation, when you look at those statistics, the numbers are staggering. Many families are having to step up to bridge the gap. Over half of Gen Z, 53%, and millennials, 51%, expected to receive a cash inheritance, and many also anticipate property or investment transfers. So at the same time, 73% of Canadians plan to leave some kind of legacy, whether cash, real estate, or personal property, but not all legacies are purely positive. The survey found 19% will leave behind debt. It's kind of the sandwich generation is under strain. They kind of comment that 37% of Canadians are providing care for aging parents as well, or in-laws, and 15% are balancing that with raising their own children. So how does this matter? Like really, we've talked about before, it matters a lot. Financial support for families is often seen to help enable first-time home buyers to access the housing market. But there's also that kind of careful balance between helping them now and putting their financial future at risk, like from that inheritance. We kind of see it, and we don't propose to be, or purport rather to be accountants or financial planners. So I would say certainly speak to any of them before, or your lawyer before kind of, getting into gifted down payments or assisting with down payment, especially when it comes to like couples where they might not be, might be just a young couple, where one side is helping financially. Certainly speak to a lawyer about what could be written up from a legality standpoint to protect your child's that inheritance or living inheritance. But it's certainly something where we see it. I know you see it regularly. I do as well, almost weekly, of a gifted down payment in some capacity or another. And it's not the full down payment all the time. Sometimes it's a few thousand. Sometimes it's help with closing costs. Sometimes it's a very large one. And it's something we see regularly, where that living inheritance, it also becomes tax-free, as opposed to kind of waiting until death.
It's funny how many times too, I'll be talking to first-time buyers about their plans, and they say, oh, well, we have, 5% saved. I said, oh, okay, it's perfect. Then they ask, like, is there any other way we can increase that? And I talk about, like, from your RSPs, like I talk about, the first-time home buyers or home buyers plan and so on. And then I mentioned gifted down payments. They're like, what? Like, that's kind of a common, like, they didn't know about it. And as soon as I tell them, it's like, oh, well, the down payment just went from 5 to 15 or 20, like, what if we put 20% down? So it is one of those things where it's almost like parents have been looking for, like you said, that opportunity to kind of reallocate their savings. And it is pretty wild when you think about, like, I have a 19-year-old, I have 3 children, obviously, but a 19-year-old and a 24-year-old, both of them obviously have aspirations of owning homes at some point. But I would expect, like, if my daughter wants to buy a home in the next 6 years, like, she's going to have to start saving 5 years ago to get that down payment, essentially, So I would expect at some point in the future, like, there's going to be almost like an expectation that I am going to potentially give them a portion of that down payment, or it's kind of an expectation of the parents moving forward are going to have to contribute more, or grandparents, as you said, to help that next generation of people get into their first home, just because of the cost, the affordability, everything that kind of comes with that. Everything we're talking about, really, it's just like that next wave, that next 10, 20 years of finance in Canada is going to be very interesting. It seems as though, obviously you get mixed reports, but it seems as though the economy is a bit stagnant right now, with the job loss numbers that we had and so on. And the Bank can just cut rates, which is obviously typically a sign that the economy is not strong. So I'm interested to see in 10 years from now where things sit as far as, the boomers, and with them passing, like, what happens with that generational wealth? Where does that go? Does it go to, like you said, millennials, Gen Zs, et cetera? Like, where does all that money go in 10 to 20 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can definitely be assured that Jackson and Serena are giving you a phone call in due time to hit you up for that down.
I found this amazing $2 million home. Like, what? Yeah. I'll buy you a sofa.
It's 500 square feet and factory built.
Yeah, 3.25 million. No.
No, it's it is certainly a an interesting situation that the economy and the younger generation is put in, where parents want to support their kids. Some are not able to. Some are still struggling in retirement. They don't have necessarily, pensions or anything like that. So there's like that, but they have that pressure still to somehow support the parents or support the kids rather, or grandkids. And then there's that expectation kind of seemingly of like some of the younger generation of like coming with the handout, as opposed to figuring out, like we've talked before about how to get into a home with that 5% down, that introductory home, and kind of, do some, put some sweat equity into it to increase the condition of the home, raise that value and kind of, move along that trend. And so it's, it is really something that, is kind of like, to your point, is it going to be interesting to see whether that mentality continues of like, okay, let's get in, or of an increased value, work hard, save up, what we can, get in on that smaller home and not the white picket fence, or whether it is going to continue of just like larger gifted downs. But for any of you parents that are listening, it is something that you could certainly do. Banks just look for a signed gift letter. So this is a letter specific to the bank. So don't write one ahead of time. And it's going to outline that, yes, this is a gift. This is the amount. This is what it's going to, the property. Depending on the size of the gift, they are going to look sometimes to your account or a copy of your statements to see that it is coming from you and where it's coming from. But typically, they're just looking for your for the child's or the borrower's bank account to show that it's been deposited. Something like I said before, you do want to be cognizant of is, obviously protecting your child. If you are the one that's gifting the funds and they're buying a property with somebody else, is speak to a lawyer, get something, drafted up, maybe outlining what that gift is, that's that kid's portion or down payment, just to protect them as they're kind of going through that purchase.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like it is really a smart way to transfer that wealth. Like if you're gifting the funds to a child, again, not tax advice, not an accountant, just to give that disclaimer. But if you're transferring that money as a gift to the child, that's tax-free to the child on their primary home, right? It has to be on their primary home. You can't use it for rentals or what have you. So it's just for the primary home of the child. And then when they sell the home, currently at least, there's no capital gains tax on that. So you're essentially transferring that wealth tax-free prior to you passing, right? So from an inheritance standpoint, if you're investing in that home for your child, essentially, that is really like a fairly tax-free way to transfer that wealth, which is actually quite smart, right? As far as like plans and options. So it is something to consider. And that's why it's funny when I explain that to first-time buyers, or just even mention the fact that they can get a gift from an immediate family member. It's like their eyes are like, oh shit. Not all of them, but obviously like some of them are like the wheels start turning like, oh, wait a minute. This might be a way that, bank of mom and dad can actually help out and get the ball moving here a little quicker.
Yeah. And I mean, I see it as well where, people say, well, not everyone is, not everyone has money to be able to gift $100,000,
Of course,
$200,000. And that, of course, but there is also those that have maybe been in their home for a period of time, just paying it, never refinance it or tap into equity. And I have parents that instead they recognize they don't have the savings, but they can qualify based on their numbers and they can afford that extra $500 a month in payments. Because right now where rates are at, it's roughly $550 a month in payments per 100,000. And so they're actually pulling out that equity and refinancing to pull out that 100,000 or 50,000 or whatever that amount is to help their kids, giving them that lump sum, helping them get into their home earlier. And then the parent is sometimes because they can budget it, they don't have that lump sum, but they can afford that $250 or $500 a month that maybe helps their kid get started. So there are other ways in which pulling from your RSPs, pulling from your investments or your retirement fund or anything like that, of leveraging the equity in your existing home to help your kids get started as well. So just something, I wanted to put in there because I know it does come up of a lot when we talk about gifted funds, of like people commenting that it's, that's just for the rich kind of thing. But it's not always the case. It's good to speak to a professional and kind of come up with a strategy.
Yeah, and speaking of first-time home buyers, there was actually something else I saw this morning in MPA Mag. So it's talking about why plenty of first-time buyers still aren't stepping off the sidelines. I'll give you a quick summary here. So here's a trend worth tracking in the Canadian housing market. Even though rates have softened and prices are cooling, many first-time buyers are still holding back. According to the Royal LePage survey, while a lot of younger Canadians are gearing up, doing research, getting pre-approvals, visiting open houses, only a small fraction plan to buy right away. Many expect to wait at least 12 to 24 months. Why the hesitation? First, affordability still looks tough in many markets. Lower rates aren't enough to offset high prices and down payment demands. Second, many buyers expect conditions will improve. Maybe prices or rates will dip even further. And third, uncertainty in the economy is making people cautious about jumping in too fast. So for mortgage professionals and agents, this is a moment to lean into value. So be the guide, be the trust. This is kind of where all these conversations come in. And I would say, just to touch on that point, like there are a lot of people that I have pre-approvals from 2 years ago of first-time buyers that are still shopping. And now it's almost like proof positive because they've waited. Prices have come down slightly. Rates have come down at least from a year and a half ago. So it kind of perpetuates that hesitation, right? It's like, oh, well, this actually worked out that we waited. Maybe we should wait a bit longer. And, we talked about this about a year ago when this same sort of thing was happening. And we had pre-approvals for, people shopping for 12 to 24 months. That has kind of continued over the last, 24 months, basically.
Mhm.
Where there's still people now that I'm pre-approving, they're saying like, oh, we're not looking to buy for another 12 to 18 months. So they're kind of saying that up front now, as opposed to, getting pre-approved and not seeing something they like. They're now actively planning ahead, which I think is actually, very responsible. But maybe a sign of the times that this is, there's kind of that analysis paralysis where it's like, oh, well, maybe we'll wait. And like we talked about before, maybe they're waiting to kind of get that, like try to buy right at the bottom if they're, trying to strategically plan when to buy. But ultimately, if you see something you like, people always like, I've seen people also say, we're not looking for 12 to 18 months to buy. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, we found this one, we put an offer in. It's like, okay, like, yeah, I guess that 12 months was a round number, rounding down. So, yeah. So what are you seeing? And does that sound like, have you seen something similar to that, I guess, on your side of the table?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's pretty prototypical, and it is. I completely understand where first-time home buyers are coming from as well. When they're looking at, to your point, like a year and a half ago, when they were thinking about it, they're looking at interest rates in the sixes, and now they're in the high threes and low fours, so down, 2.5% from where they were 2 years ago, kind of in that 24-month cycle. So, you know, there is validity in kind of what happened over that period of time for them. As rates have come down to where they are, like they're likely not to come down too much further. Like fixed rates are probably going to settle in the mid threes and really kind of settle around there, which is where they were in 2019 as well. They kind of settled in that mid threes and that kind of higher quartile of threes on the fixed, and variables being in kind of that lower three range as prime comes down a little bit further. So for those first-time home buyers that have been waiting on the sidelines the last couple of years rather, and seeing rates come from mid sixes down to, low fours and high threes, thinking that it's going to drop into the ones, like my hope is that they're not waiting for it to get down to pandemic level rates, thinking that that is going to be the norm, because that's what they were maybe when they were 19, 20 and they saw that, and now they're, 23, 25. And so they're thinking maybe in their method, like in their head, that, they're waiting for it to settle down in the twos or ones. That I hope that's not the case, because that's not going to happen again unless, really everything goes to shit. But is kind of, again, over the years we've talked about it on this show, is like buying when you're financially sound and ready, buying, where makes sense for you and when makes sense for you, and not trying to just always time the market exactly. Really it's got to be that decision that, okay, I want to buy, I can qualify for this. I'm comfortable with this from a budgetary standpoint. And really just, getting in at that point, not trying to time the market is really next to impossible to do. Obviously, they've waited that out, and it's kind of one of those, like, they're almost like seeing the proof in the pudding, but but at the same time, kind of waiting to hit that lowest bottom. Well, as things, drop even further for rates, if that happens, like, and the market picks up again, then like what sort of cause and effect is there?
I will say too that I have seen more in the last 6 months, people actually concerned and thinking about affordability versus what's my maximum buying power. Like we've seen over the last decade, basically, you pre-approve someone for 700, they send you properties at 750. It's just like, it's just how it is. Like, that's just what we see. But recently, I've actually seen people that have qualified for, $1 million, 1.2, and they're shopping in the 7 to 8 range. And they're looking at basically just like, what is that monthly payment? Can I afford this? Like, I don't care what the regulations say and what the guidelines are. Like, this is how much we want to pay on a monthly basis. And then they're finding a property that fits within that range. And I can't implore people enough to do that. Like, think about if you're paying $2,500 in rent and you can afford that, buy a house where the mortgage is going to be around that $2,500. Like, think about your affordability first, your budget, and act in that manner, as opposed to, oh, we can actually qualify for $4,000 according to the guidelines. Let's buy that. No, that's how you become house poor, and that's where you overextend yourself. So, like, think about what you want to pay monthly, and then kind of back end or like kind of reverse engineer it and figure out, okay, what does that qualify me for as far as purchase price, and then buy within that limit as opposed to the other way around. Like, don't let us tell you how much you can afford. Think about how much you can afford first, and then we can tell you, like, this is how much you qualify for, but this is how much your maximum buying power be if you want to stay within that range. Like, I found that a lot more people are asking that sort of question now. And I've kind of started to shape the conversation in that manner. Instead of, here's your maximum buying power, it's kind of like, here's your maximum buying power, but this is the monthly payment. What are you comfortable with, and what does that look like in that initial conversation?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's so important. People get away from that of, like, exactly as you said, it's when they come to you, you say you qualify at 700, they come to 750, you kind of just say, did I stutter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't qualify.
Hey. But this says 750, hey?
Yeah. On that note, should we end off with a couple mood boosts if you got any?
Let's do it. I got three. Number one, what did the egg say at the house party? Omelet. Number two, I just went to a wedding. It was so emotional that the cake was in tears. And number three, when a clock is hungry, it goes back for seconds. Yeah. I want to give a quick thanks to our amazing sponsors, Guertin Poirier, Avocado Lawyers, Big Insurance in Westboro, and Centum, and our new sponsor, Easy Neon Signs. Go to easyneonsigns.ca, use the promo code TOREP, and you get 20% off each and every order. David, thank you for being here. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the jungle.
Okay. See you, everyone.
Deuces.